Hello, you guys. I hope you guys can hear me, but if you can't, I'm moving my mouth and I'm sure I'll see in the comments that you can't hear me, so I will continue to talk until you let you know. So, you guys, I am so excited to have this discussion because I have been talking about the manosphere for, I don't know, at least a year or more. And I realized that there's still a lot of women that don't know what the manosphere is. And so, if you guys don't know me, I am Dr. Tisha Guy, a licensed professional counselor. And some of you probably saw me on Guys Home Unhinged, where I had two co-hosts with Timo News and Steve J. Well, Steve J is going to be joining me tonight as we talk about the manosphere. Because you're probably wondering, how is she talking about the manosphere? She's not a man. I know, right? But don't worry, I will have a gentleman on tonight with me, and we're going to deep dive into this topic of the manosphere. But real quick, I kind of want to talk to you about why I decided to bring this conversation to you. And in my private practice, in case you guys don't know, I've been in private practice for 14 years. And so in my private practice, I would say I predominantly work with women. And sound check. Okay, we're gonna check the sound. Give me one second. Okay, what about now? Can you hear me now? You said it was worse. Can you hear me now? So, I'm yes. Thank you, Love Passion. Yes, awesome. Okay, baby, I keep telling y'all when I say the devil just don't want me to be great, he just don't want me to be great. And you would think that this is the first time I've ever used StreamYard, and I've been using StreamYard for over a year consistently. But every time I get on here, it want to mute me. Like the mic just don't want to work. And literally, I don't do a darn thing different. But that's okay because I understand what it is. They know I'm about to bring some heat right now. Some folks ain't gonna like what I'm gonna talk about, but we definitely need to have this conversation. Hello, Dr. Malik Rahim. I might be pulling you up on the panel because I'm sure you have some thoughts about this manosphere that we are going to talk about tonight. So I am so glad you can hear me. So I went through that whole introduction spiel and you guys couldn't hear me. So now you're going to get it again. I am Dr. Tanisha Guy. In case this is your first time tuning in, I'm a licensed professional counselor, and some of you might have caught me on God Talk Unhinged, where I had two co-hosts, Fatima Muse and Steve J. I'm sorry, Dr. Fatima Muse and Steve J. And we talked about everything related to mental health. So tonight, Steve will be joining me, and we're going to talk about what is the manosphere. Okay, great. You can hear me loud and clear. So we're going to be talking about what is the manosphere. So you're probably wondering, why am I even having this conversation about the manosphere? Why does it affect me? Why is it important? I'm not a man. Clearly, you can see that I am 100% woman. But there is a reason why I'm having this conversation tonight. So in my private practice, I would say prior to COVID, maybe 7% of my clients were women. And oftentimes, many of my clients would have issues, even though they might have been struggling with things like anxiety and depression. On top of that, they would have some underlying concerns about relationships, whether they were in a relationship or not in a relationship. The topic would repeatedly show itself up in counseling. And so I started to look into this platform or this, I don't even know what you call it, the manosphere, right? And I'm going to tell you what it is. Well, Steve is really going to tell you what it is. But I started to look into their videos because some of the things that my clients, women, were saying, they were very offensive. And so I was like, who are saying these things to you? Where are you getting this from? And so it left a bad taste in my mouth. So I wanted to do some research to find out where this language was coming from. Why was it coming out in such an aggressive way? And then Steve started telling me more about the different levels of the manosphere. And so as a woman, I think it's really important to know, what is the manosphere? What are men talking about? And how does it impact us as women? So I would like to introduce you to my co-host of God Talking Unhinged and Gumbo Talk. Steve J is back. You guys have not seen us together in a very long time. And so, Steve, are you ready to get into this tonight?
I'm very excited. This is one of my favorite topics. So I really would like to let the ladies know about the manosphere. The manosphere is basically the male version of the collective of feminism. And it doesn't exist in one specific place. It's a gathering of articles and channels that men use with influencers to come up with different strategies for masculinism. I guess if masculinism is a word. Um, there are different groups in it. We really talk about a lot of things that are related to men's rights. You have men's activists, those men who are incels, who've kind of given up on dating. You have
Wait,
men.
see, let me stop you for a moment because your description of the manosphere, I think, was a general
Right.
description of it. And so when I was first introduced to the manosphere, I thought, so this is the space that men are using to vent. This is a space that men are using to express their thoughts. This is a space where men are gathering together to be vulnerable and to talk about the things that you don't have a space otherwise to talk about. Is that my understanding?
No. It's such a broad term. That's part of the manosphere. But like I said, you definitely have those men who are misogynists. You have the men who are in the pickup artist community, how to pick up women. That's a part of the manosphere. You have men who are fathers who are more concerned with their rights as fathers and trying to keep those. So it is just a big conglomerate of anything related to masculinity and men's rights. Now you're going to find, a lot of different aspects of the manosphere. Some of it will be what the ladies that you're talking about have run across. I think most recently, uh, the gentleman that was at the helm was Andrew Tate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people realize this, but before he was banned off social media, and I do mean all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, Andrew Tate was the most Googled man on the planet. This
Because
was
it's controversial.
before Donald Trump, before President Biden. Andrew Tate was the most Googled man on the planet. Before Andrew, pretty much, I think Kevin Samuels had the most popular channel that was kind of relating to the manosphere. But there's a myriad of other influencers. They're not as large as Kevin had gotten. Even prior to Kevin, there was Tommy Sotomayor. He had some of the same content, but this was wasn't pre YouTube, but it wasn't as organized. And then, we talked about Shahrazad Ali, who was on Donahue. So the content of men's rights in different capacities has always been there. A lot of people just may not have been aware of it. It's become a little bit more mainstream, and there are divisions of it. You do have what you call, like Black Twitter. There's the Black Manosphere, and there's also the what they call the White Manosphere, more the general Manosphere. So it's a very large conglomerate of different parts.
Now, tonight, and thank you, Dr. Malik. Tonight, we are going to specifically be addressing the Black Manosphere. And the reason why I want to address the Black Manosphere is because I am a Black woman, and most of my clients are African American women, not all. But the experience that they have had from the Manosphere is from the Black Manosphere. And so, I'm going to get to the topic or the comment that Dr. Malik posted. Interesting thing is the red pill represents estrogen. We ain't even gotten to the pills yet, Dr. Malik. Hold on. You're moving real fast. We got to take this slow. I really want to break down because I want women to understand what the manosphere is, and that, yes, there are levels of the manosphere and they're having very different conversations. But Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. I have a breakdown of 4 different, I guess, sections of the manosphere. Mm-hmm. So I have the MRAs, men's rights activists. So that's more of what I'm hearing you talk about, where they argue political change that will benefit men.
Right.
And then I have men going their own way, which is another section. This is more about conversations that this particular group of men see women as toxic. And even though they may date women, or Black women in particular, they have no desire of marrying these women.
Well, I wouldn't say it's not women, but generally it's more American women.
American women are toxic. Okay.
Westernized women is pretty much the term I think that they use.
Women westernized. Right. Thank you for providing clarification. Dr. Malik, I missed you guys as well. Steve and I definitely have been away for a while, so you're going to see more of us coming soon, definitely in 2023. This third category is the pickup artists. So right. This is that group that is teaching men strategies and how to pick up women. And from my experience and viewing of these categories of the pickup artists, they seem to be misogynist and use negative terms as they describe women and how they're supposed to pick women up. But that's just from what I viewed. Am I still
Right.
on
Well,
so far?
the artist community came more into prominence. There was a gentleman called Neil Strauss. He was a writer, I believe, for Rolling Stone or some large magazine, and he wrote a book called The Game. It looks like a Bible, and he talks about his exploits in Los Angeles. And there was a group of gentlemen, and they rented a house, and they all, went about dating women in different ways, and they had different ways about picking women up, and that's kind of where it started. And then from there, there was I guess, a need in the market for men who did not know how to talk to women. So that was something that got monetized, and now you'll see, different pickup artist experts and men who claim to know how to talk to women or get women into bed, that type of thing. So
But
that's
you, and again, only from the videos that I've seen, you would know more. You kind of dibble and dabble in the manosphere way more than I do. But in the videos that I've seen from the pickup artists, I can understand a man teaching another man a strategy to be able to approach women, to be able to date and have relationships. But that's not what I see in these videos. What I see from the pickup artists is that you should treat a woman this way, which is typically negative. um, you should talk down to her. In fact, if you don't show her respect, she'll want you more. So the way in which they're saying you should pick up a woman is very degrading.
Well, that is just one of the strategies. And as
That
we
a lot
know,
of them are using. These
well,
are
well, we,
individuals that have hundreds and thousands of followers. Let's be
well,
clear, they have a massive microphone that
well,
people are tuning in and listening to.
well, definitely. So we will always know the things that are most negative will get the most light, but in a lot of ways, if they're saying it, then it has been successful. I know a lot of women may not want to necessarily admit this, but that's always the myth of the bad boy. Goes back to, I guess, biblical times. Like, the guy who treats women the best generally is the guy that finishes last.
That's what I'm
So
saying. They're teaching a generation of men, young men, little boys, even, that in order for you to pick up a woman, you have to degrade her, you have to disrespect her, you have to treat her bad and become this bad boy image, and she'll want you for that.
well, I don't know specifically that it's exactly as you stated. I think from what I've seen, they talk about validation, when to use positive and negative comments. But I mean, I think that's just overall game and psychology that everybody uses. I don't think that anybody is going into a bar, insulting all the women, and leaving, successfully with a lot of them. So, I think that's a little bit of hyperbole. There are some things that are done in that community that are negative, but there are things that are done, in dating that are negative as it relates to validation and who's being validated and who's the prize and who's not. So, like, once again, it's the male opinion of what has worked for those gentlemen with those women. So, if
So,
there are men that are paying for the course continuously, then obviously at some point or level it must work.
so have I missed the part underneath the pickup artists, the section of men that are talking? Because again, I could be biased because it may be the videos that I've watched and viewed, is that they're teaching men, young boys, how to pick up women, but they're not teaching them how to establish healthy relationships. So that's not the aim. The aim is to pick up as multiple women as you can and sleep with as many women as possible.
Some of the artists, yes. I mean, but that's within that community. That's what that is about. It's the pickup community. They're trying to pick up and sleep with women. A lot of times that is primarily targeted for your younger males, who just may be getting in their first experiences with women, who may not be successful for whatever reasons. Maybe they're a little dorky, maybe they get nervous around women. It's to give them more confidence into relating with the opposite sex if that's something that they haven't been able to do successfully.
Okay. So Dr. Malik said, get into the Black Manosphere. So here's one of the sections underneath the Black Manosphere. And the group of men are following underneath the category of Save Yourself Black Men.
Right.
And I think for many who are probably watching this, Save yourself, black man means what?
Not to be concerned with the overall group and do the things that you need to do individually to succeed. I think if we talk about, politically speaking, a lot of times the generally African Americans have supported the Democratic Party blindly. That's something that I think that that community talks about a little bit more. In terms of educating yourself, just making yourself a better version or the best version that you can be, and going about saving yourself and not necessarily worrying as much about the group as in the past.
So is this the same group or is it a different group? I don't, I can't keep up anymore. But it's the passport group. Like, are they separate from the Save Yourself Man group? The
I think there's some overlap in there. The Passport Brothers is not something that's new. It's just another avenue or way to go about your life. Originally, they were a little bit more. They were established more prior to the Save Yourself Black Man movement. A lot of that comes from I think it was Charles Tyler. He was I think it was a retired either electrician or firefighter from Philadelphia. He started a lot of that in terms of going to the islands in South America and how to work remotely and support yourself in another country who had a weaker currency than the U.S. dollar. And since that time, that expat life has kind of taken off. Generally speaking, they look into those countries first. If you have a little bit more resources, those men tend to focus over in Thailand because it's a little bit more expensive to get over there. It's not as cheap as a flight from, say, Miami to Brazil. So there's different pockets of people. You have, people in Africa as well. But that is one of the movements is to go where your dollar goes the furthest, as well as where you're treated best by the ladies.
I love how you're being so polite tonight, Stephen. I appreciate that because I have some newbies in the room tonight, and they don't know you yet. They're still learning you, and so I appreciate your tenderness with them tonight. But I'm going to go back to the Passport Brothers because
Correct.
none of the things that I have seen, and I agree with what you're saying, but and how it's communicated is very different. The how it is
Also,
communicated is black women are aggressive. Black women are not agreeable. Black women, everything about a black woman is so negative that they have finally gotten to a point to where they're saying we are no longer interested in black women and we're going overseas to find our wives.
well, once again, it's not so much of black women, but American Western
Oh no,
women.
no, no, no. You can say American women, but these
Right.
men are very clear in caveating it by saying black women.
Well, if that is the American women that they have dated, then yes. But generally speaking, if we're talking about males in general, it is American women, and this is something that's done within just the American community as well. The expat life, that's just another lifestyle that men are adopting who have the means at this point. So for those men who have dated exclusively black women in America, then yes, they do have those opinions. And what I think black women don't realize is Brazil has the largest concentration of Africans outside of Africa. So, basically our boat went north and their boat went south, and
Exactly.
they still adhere to a lot of more traditional views and values than have taken precedence here in America. So you can find someone who's a little bit more family and less career oriented there. They have more structure. Like you and I always talk about, it's still more of a patriarchal society. So that is something that men are interested in is those type environments rather than wrestling here and as they say in the Matrix. And I guess we can get into the pills after that segue.
And so I was actually getting ready to ask you one more question and then say, let's go ahead and jump into the pills because Again, if anyone is being introduced to the manosphere for the first time, they have no idea what does red pill, blue pill, purple pill, black pill mean. So before we get there, as Dr. Malik said, the red pill is the estrogen pill. When this group of men talk about the great migration, right, overseas, because they want women who are not Americanized, right? What does that mean, right? What are they saying they no longer want, which is why they're grabbing their passports and leaving and finding their wives overseas?
Well, I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, it happened
We
in
know it's not new, but I
well,
need you to
well,
describe.
I'm going to give you a little history, and then we'll get to where we're going. Even if we look at after the wars, there are a large amount of black men that stayed over in Europe. There are a lot of people that didn't come back to America because of how they were being treated racially, as well as a lot of the things that were going on during that era. So it's nothing new for men to relocate for what they feel like is going to be a better life. Now at this point, what has occurred is because when we talk about all of those groups in the manosphere, those men who have gone through those custody battles, there's a gentleman that had a documentary that did quite well just about how the entire child support system and how that's ran. I believe we talked about that a while back. So there, all of those factors that we're talking about, whether it's the men's rights, if it's talking about the prominence of the matriarchy or the gynocracy, or just the way that America is going. Um, Whereas the men feel as though they are not getting the best deal that they can, so they're going where they're treated best. When um, you talk about submission and being agreeable, and those words causing grief or traumatic responses when they're brought up in public, those are things that don't take place outside the country. Submission and agreeableness is something that is more or less taught. To serve your husband is not a bad thing. To have a family before your career is not a bad thing in those places. And for those men who are looking for those things, then that is, one of the mantras is, go where you're treated best. And if you're not being treated best here in America, then we are at a point where we're financially savvy enough that that can be done. I had a group of my friends at a certain point, and you and I never talked about this. When I went to Prague, and we were traveling, well, they were traveling a little bit more than I. They had stopped dating in the U.S. They would save their money, and they were dating exclusively on these trips that they would take. They were not interested in dating American women, whether they've been black, Asian. They were not interested in American women, and that was how they felt, and that's how they went about their business, was to work, and when they could get out and travel, that's what they did.
So, what I'm hearing you say is that the push to date internationally or to even marry internationally is the experience that many men have encountered with women, where they're placing a focus on their education or their careers, and that becomes a priority, and they're postponing marriage. And as a result of that, men are saying women are less agreeable. Um, I don't know if if they're saying that women are not submissive, but women are not submissive. They're less agreeable, and they're not willing to um, focus on their spouses. They're choosing to focus on careers.
Right, right. They have the concept of more or less a power couple, which we don't necessarily look at it the same way in the manosphere. I know that's something that's marketed, but for the man who has done all the things and done all those sacrifices to get where he's gotten, a lot of times he's not really interested in being in a power couple. He wants to, be the breadwinner, and he wants a wife. And a lot of times those aren't the things that those women are interested in. A lot of times you find there is a lot of experiences that women have had that they're jaded about relationships, and they look at things in certain ways that, when you get outside of the matrix, that those women don't look at things in those capacities. Like, from the times I've traveled, the questions that I entertained weren't, how much did I make, or there wasn't some type of way that the woman was trying to figure out how much I made, and what's your job. It was more about, who I was as a man, what my values were, what was my, do I have any brothers and sisters, those relationships, rather than going through some type of you know, round robin interview with a woman in her friend group about how financially stable I was, and what was I preparing to do financially for her to make her life easy. So that is more or less, like I said, the way that things run here in America, aka the Matrix. So men are trying to escape the Matrix.
So, great segue into red pill, blue pill, purple pill, black pill. So, let's go ahead and get into what is the matrix and how does it apply to the manosphere?
Well, the Matrix is the best analogy that has been used for the American society in is the movie The Matrix. And in the movie, Neo is given a choice of the red pill or the blue pill. So the men who are blue pill seem to be comfortable with the way that things are, and they don't see any reason for there to be a change. Um, Red pill men, they are aware of women's nature. There being a hypergamy in place. The system not being designed to benefit men as well as it's designed to benefit women. So those are men who are red pill. They're red pill aware. That's kind of how what Neo was in the Matrix. He was aware there was a Matrix. Um,
And they're against feminism.
they're red pill aware. This
They're against feminism.
I don't know if we could say that they're against feminism. What we can say is they're for masculinism. They're pro men. They're pro men rights. So I can't say that they're against feminists. I know that they don't have a problem with women having equal pay and things of that nature. I think to say anybody's against one group is kind of divisive. I think there are some things about feminism that they do not care for, but I can't say they're against feminism. That's real broad. We'd have to get in some specifics before I could tell you that red pill men are just totally against feminism. I think there's some concepts within that
So,
that
so when you come off as being misogynist, sexist, those
well,
those
like I said, the manosphere is a broad group of people. There are
right,
pockets.
red pill specifically,
Well,
part
no, I'm
as
just saying there are pockets within the manosphere that there's some blue pill men that are feel that way. So like I said, it's so broad you can't just nail down. Well, it's all the real red pill guys. No, it's not. There are going to be groups and pockets within each group that are a little bit more uh, controversial or riled up about certain topics than others. But I can't just say all red pill men are against feminism. That's
so maybe they're not right because they're not a monolith. I get that. So is it fair to say that red pill men believe that feminism opposes men's rights?
I'm not. I'm not going to say they're in opposition of feminism. What I'm saying is there's some parts that they don't agree with. It's not an all or nothing thing. That's all I'm saying. You
Okay, I,
know,
I I can take that, even though some of the comments that are being said would lead one to assume that these individuals have very deep rooted issues with feminists.
well, that just might be according to your YouTube algorithm.
I can go with that. All right. So we have red pill, blue pill. Now let's get into the purple pill.
The purple pill is what you get when you mix both the red and the blue pill. So they're not. they're kind of in the middle of the road. Like they're aware that there are some things that work in women's benefit, but they're still content with the system as it is. They don't necessarily want to change it, but they are still aware that there are some things that could be better.
Mhm. And then we have our black pill.
The black
Everett,
pill.
I'm sorry, Steve. I was going to respond to Everett that he
Okay.
wrote Alpha. And so I'm definitely coming down Alpha Lane shortly. We're definitely going to address that tonight in the Manosphere. But go ahead, Black
Oh,
Pill.
black pill is probably what you're talking about more that are anti-feminist. Those are the men who may not necessarily be traditionally attractive. They may be short, and they just feel as though that they are not able to compete and get the women that they feel like they desire. So they have just basically checked out of relationships, and they tend to be very angry. A lot of times, those are the men that you see that may be the mass shooters. So I think that's more the group that you're talking about in terms of that have more problems with feminism. Like they're very upset. Like if you're a red pill guy and say for instance, I don't know, you're a little underweight or you're short, you still feel like if I make myself my best version, I still can find a woman. But for those women, for those men who are black pill, who are short, they just think that, I lost the genetic lottery. I'm not gonna find me anybody. Women don't like smart or nice guys. They've been abused. So they have just checked out of relationships and, pretty much abhor, like you said, feminism more than any other of those groups. So I believe
Mhm.
that's more or less what you were talking about. There's not a whole lot of black pill content that is as prominent as some of the other pills, but it is still out there. But that is primarily the group I think you're referring to more so than the red pill.
And I can definitely see that. These are the individuals that are frustrated that 20% of the male population is most desired. And
Right.
unfortunately, they don't fall in that 20%. And as a result, instead of them internalizing their aggression and anger, they externalize it to women.
Right. Those are the men who are on Tinder or any of your dating apps and they've swiped on everybody and nobody has swiped on them. So they've deleted the app and they're mad and they don't like women because they don't think that they have what it takes to get what they want, and they've just checked out.
Hey, Fatima, I'm sorry, Dr. Fatima, you're right. There are so many pills, which is why we're having this conversation tonight, because I think some of the experiences that women are having as they're dating and meeting men is that they're coming across individuals that ascribe to the manosphere. And they fall in one of these categories: the red pill, black pill, blue pill, purple pill, and so forth. And so I think it's important for women to understand where men are coming from so that we can be able to communicate better and more effectively in understanding how did they get here and why are they showing up in the way that they're showing up in their relationships.
Definitely.
So I saw Everett mention alpha and Dr. Malik said excel. So in the manosphere, and we used to talk about this on God Talk Unhinged, we would get into, and it's funny that Dr. Fatima just entered the room as we're getting ready to segue into this, but we would talk about alpha men and
Correct.
beta men.
Correct.
Uh, and the list goes on how the manosphere has broken down these categories of men and who they are and how they show up in relationships. So let's do a breakdown of what those particular categories are. Let's start obviously with the alpha.
Well, generally, the alpha men would be the red pill aware. The beta would be more the blue pill. Um, depends on how far you want to go down that whole spectrum. Sigma would probably be more your purple. I'm not sure what black is. They're just pretty angry, to be honest with you. So, and that's kind of more or less what the red pill gentlemen are trying to do. They want to be in a position where they can lead and that be respected. And what you have here a lot of times is a system by which that is not something that is supported or even um, even like the images, like say for instance, you and I talked recently about like the woman king, and there was a big movement in the male side not to support that because of some of those images. And even, I was looking at some of the reviews for Black Panther, and because of the movie being really heavily this time focused on the women, that wasn't something that went over well in the community either. So
And so I remember when we talked about the Woman King
mhm.
and how the Manosphere responded to the Woman King, and not so much as they didn't like the storyline. I don't think some of them possibly even chose to watch the movie, but they were offended by the title.
Correct. And when you and I talked about that, because I told you I was slightly offended, like because remember I was like, well, and we talked about it being marketing and things of that nature. And I asked you, well, how well would the man queen go over? So that was not something that I think that we would have gotten a
But it
lot of.
wouldn't offend me though. Like, had there been a movie about the man queen, I wouldn't be offended.
Well,
I would
I
not
guess,
watch it because of that.
but I guess what I'm saying is, generally speaking, whenever we talk about men being queens, is something that is not heterosexual. But when we talk about the woman king, that was something that was interpreted as that. Well, that's fine. I think that that's something that men have a problem with, is women being kings. There's so many other words for women to use to be leaders, but for a woman to be a king is something that is offensive to us because we have so few titles that we can use.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna do a quick recap because hey, Kimberly, she just joined the room and she said, "Who's the Manosphere?" And so, who's the Manosphere is a really good question. So, how do you do a quick recap of what is the Manosphere for
Well,
Kimberly?
the Manosphere is the online community of articles and websites and blogs and YouTube channels of influencers who are focused on men's rights and men being happy.
Oh, you said that so politely.
I'm in a polite mood tonight. In fact, let me run get my charger. I'll be right back.
You are right. Like, for those of you, this is your first time meeting Steve. This is normally not him. I'm surprised he isn't running around over there doing backward cartwheels because the Manosphere is his wheelhouse, which is why I brought him on here tonight to talk about it. But bigger picture is why we're talking about the Manosphere is because in my practice, I kind of transitioned from doing individual counseling to more of couples therapy. And I absolutely love doing couples therapy. And so I'm really passionate about helping people improve their relationships. But I often found myself disenfranchised working with my individual clients because of the experiences that they had in the dating realm as single women. And the more I sat with their experiences, the more I connected to what was happening on social media. And I realized that there is a huge connect in the Black community when it comes to relationships and what we want and what we're willing to do or sacrifice to get it. And we just don't seem to be on the same page. And so I do think that one of the issues is we're as a woman, I think we are sometimes unable to accept accountability for our actions and what has created the black pill men. Let me say that. All right, that's kind of the best way I can describe it. But also, I think individuals like the black pill or some other men in the manosphere are not taking in consideration the experiences that women have had, which is why women are showing up the way they show up, which is why women are saying, I probably need to focus on my career before I focus on this relationship because in the past, men have shown me that they're not consistent and reliable. So what is causing this disconnect and this growing fuel in the manosphere that seems to put us against each other in the Black community. I'm not talking about any other race of people. I'm talking specifically about the Black community. Like, it is very difficult to even have conversations with some Black men when and for me, let me not say that, because I think I can talk to any and everybody. But I will say, being that I am more engaged out in these social media streets now, based on what I see on individuals' lives and comments, I feel very disheartened by how we treat each other. And when I say we, I mean how, as a Black woman, Black men are treated. I absolutely sometimes am saddened by some of the things that we say to Black men on social media, or how we even treat them in real life. But I can also say the same thing from Black men. Like, I'm floored by some of the language that Black men use against us as Black women, the women who carry their children. Like, it blows my mind that we are on such opposite pages with each other. So I wanted to talk about the manosphere because it seems to be fueling a lot of the fire. And I think the Kevin Samuel, like, a lot of people are like, oh, Kevin Samuel started. No, Kevin Samuel didn't start it. I think he gave a face and a voice to what was already being discussed. And now, as women, we're responding like, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. But instead of us taking the time to think, well, why does he feel that way? We became defensive and we said, let me attack back. So now we're just defending ourselves and attacking the other. So am I missing something?
Yes.
What, please tell me, what am I missing?
So we have arrived here because of the shift in the dynamics in America. You know, like when we talk about, how there's a system in place that incentivizes women to leave marriages. When is that wasn't the case before. Like I talk to women sometimes, and they talk about the things that their mother taught them and the rules their mother gave them. And I have to let them know that you're not half as good a woman as your mother was. And that's part of the problem in terms of, you know, um, we have made our society more about finance, and those women who are actually in a lot of uh, situations, they are the masculine in the relationship, and they are occupying that place while still looking for a man who is masculine as well, but they don't understand that masculine women turn off masculine men. And it's more about when we talk, we're not listened to, we're scolded. It's everything Kevin Samuel said. It's, we're shamed, we're scolded, and we're told what we should want, and we are largely ignored. So when
Repeat
these
that last
things,
statement you just said, Steve.
men's desires and needs are largely ignored.
So
So
as a, I know you have a lot to say, but I just really want whoever is listening live, whatever woman is going to potentially watch the recording of this, I think that that's a very valid statement that you said. And so I want to make sure that women hear that, because I can say, as a woman in the past, I am sure I was possibly guilty of not hearing and understanding that very statement that you just made, which
right.
is why I repeat it.
And so I think, women are slightly confused about those things because of how society is made and marketed things to them. Like sometimes you and I joke about, a woman will think she's a bad chick, and a guy will look at her and say, "Oh, she's a bunch of problems." Like your Louis Vuitton purse impresses the women. I don't really care. I couldn't tell you the difference between, the Canva 9 or, the Bucket 6. I don't care. But, everything that you have done now, you've really done to impress other women, thinking it attracts men, where by large it doesn't at all. Me and my friends have never went out and like, man, look at her shoes, man. I gotta go holler at her. So there's so many things that is lost in translation between us. And whenever men say, "Well, I want this," then women say, "No, you don't." Or even like we talked about before in terms of the things that women may want in a man. They have no idea what that man wants in a woman. They just have a list of what they want, but they can't engineer and say, well, okay, like I have a friend that's a bodybuilder, so he has a certain diet. So if you wanted to date him, you can't tell him you want to go to, Pinkberry because he's not interested. Because you want to go to Pinkberry, you should think that he wants to go to Pinkberry and keep his abs. But there are things that uh, basically your job is your man now. The corporation is your man. That's who you listen to. That's who you put all your focus and emphasis in. And in large part, I understand that, but you're not going to get the quality of man you want doing that because he has other options and or desires. When you start talking about dating the 20%, these are the men who have the financial means to travel, to entertain women of different nationalities, you know. So when you talk about that, um, and also I find it very, a lot of women don't want to compete. They just think that they should get their Willy Wonka chocolate allocation of a man, and they deserve it because they deserve it. And you know how I feel about the word deserve. I don't think anybody deserves anything. I think you earn it. So they're willing to earn and put the effort in their education, but very rarely are they able to do that in their relationship.
I don't think it's that women aren't able to do that in relationships. I think when we talk about both genders, men and women, we have to think about their past experiences, and not only their past experiences in isolations, but their parents and their grandparents' past experiences, because that's what's passed down to them. And so for women, I think that we have learned that it is easier for us to move in a lane that we feel like we have some control in. Because anybody who feels like they lack control, they feel powerless, and that leads to feeling hopeless. So, what can I do so that I can feel a sense of power, right? I engage in things that I have some control over, which, i.e., is my education, my job, my career. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that women don't want relationships, but what they have come into contact with are men who possibly are not in the right place at the right time to meet them. And
No,
because that occurs, yes,
no, they just picked the wrong ones.
conversation, you'll go at it and you'll blame women entirely
No,
for where
I'm
we
saying they're picking the wrong ones. Like they're pickers off. Because we go back to the same thing about them dating the same 20% of men on Tinder, swiping on the same guys, but missing out. Like, say for instance, like if we go back to what the world used to look like it used to be okay to have a blue collar job, but now a lot of women won't date somebody who's got a blue collar job because they feel like they're above him and he's beneath them and he's not educated and he doesn't
are.
have this. But before, if you got a man who was faithful, put you first, paid the bills, all of that, that was fine. But that's not enough anymore. So, what we're
But
talking about.
I I agree with you, but the men who are showing up, like let's say for some women their picker is off. They keep picking the same guy, different name, right? But what about the women who they're coming across men who are just not ready or even mature enough to be in relationships? So the damage that they do becomes unrepairable until the woman decides to do her own work. the same thing goes both ways for the woman who shows up and the guy is a good guy for all intents and purposes. But because of the relationship that he had with her, she has now damaged him for the next woman. So because
Well,
neither party is doing their own work, the cycle continues.
well, no, it
But
doesn't.
the finger at it. So tell me, how does it not?
The men leave and they save themselves. So I guess the what we're saying in the manosphere is I don't have to sit here and wait for you to figure it out. I don't have to put up with that. I can go somewhere where my options are better and I can get what I want. I can be treated better than I'm being treated here. So, if women think that men are going to sit around and wait for them to figure it out, that's fine. But, like the article we shared the other day, what does it say? By was it 2050, 2030? Half of the women will be single and childless. So it didn't say half the men were going to be single and childless. So what we're saying is we know our worth and we're going to go somewhere and exact our worth. So we don't have to figure it out. That's why that's that movement. We're saving ourselves.
Here's that accountability that I'm talking about, that both parties need to have it. I can say as a woman that there are definitely things that we as women need to do to show up better in our relationships. I know that for a fact. I cannot sugarcoat it and be like, men are always at fault. No. But what I'm hearing you say, and when we have these conversations, is that I never hear you saying, yes, men can be held accountable and men can do some work so that they can show up as better versions of themselves. Not that we don't need you. We can always go outside the states and find somebody else. Well, at the end of the day, we can always go outside the United States and find somebody else. We know that to be true, but that doesn't fix the problem.
That's not who you are all and what you want. That's more so what men want to do. So
What I'm saying is women can do that if they choose to. That doesn't fix the problem by men saying, oh, I can just leave.
women aren't going to do that. They're going to travel in their girl groups and go to Tulum and be scared they're going to get sex trafficked and come back home because somebody scratched on the door at 2 in the morning. That is something that we know is not going to happen. You have a large group of women that are just not going to date outside of their race, and that's fine. But I think that what I'm trying to impress upon everybody here is that it's more on the women to get their stuff together because the men that they're looking for in that 20% know that they're in that 20% and they are not sitting around waiting for you to get your therapy or figure out whatever issues you got and the music is going to stop and you're not going to have a chair. There's not going to be a relationship. There's not going to be a man for you. It's going to be you and three of your homegirls like y'all was in college or whatever in a cul-de-sac sharing a house.
So this is why we're having this conversation tonight live, because this is what the manosphere sounds like, ladies. If you did not know what it sounds like, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
The inability for some men to say, I'm going to accept some accountability. And I'm not going to point the finger and say, you need to do better. You need to show up as different because I have options, as if women don't have options. They do have options. Now, will those women take those options? I don't know. But the audacity to say
Well,
women
well,
need to get
that's
together.
what we're saying in the manosphere is we've always been accountable. We've always pulled the chairs out. We've always did these things, and it's never been good enough. So that's why we
How about
are making the
that?
movements that we're making.
How about you have done that? But for the women that you did it with, your picker was off.
Well, it seems to work fine when I'm outside the country. I don't know why it's off when I stamp my passport and come back here, but when I leave, my picker seems to be 100%. So,
Well, when women leave the country, their picker is 100% too. Like, they have that option, which is
nah,
why poor Black women are choosing that option.
I doubt it very seriously. That's
This is
that's
the
not
man.
what I see when I leave.
This is the manosphere.
That is not what I see when I'm traveling.
I agree, Everett. It is a numbers game. By birth, there are more women born every year, more girls than boys. So there will never be enough men for women. Just by numbers, there aren't going to be that, right? And so I don't think that every woman wants to be in a relationship. By no means. There are some that don't, and they have that right to. But it is the group of women that would like to be in healthy relationships, and the group of men that would like to be in healthy relationships with a black person, that we just can't seem to figure it out. It's almost as if we want to continue to fight against ourselves. Again,
Well, once
not taking
again,
that conscious accountability for how we created this. What is
once
my
again,
role in this problem?
once again, I go back to what I'm telling you. America does not have a monopoly on black women. Black women are all over the globe. And this is what I'm telling you. Like, I don't know what it is about American black women that they feel like they are the only black women in the world. They're not.
I don't think that American black women feel that way. But what I'm saying to you is black men are not specific to America either.
Right. But I find fewer black women willing to date Africans. I find fewer black women willing to date men from the islands of Caribbean descent. I find fewer black women willing to make a trip to South America. And I find a minuscule amount of black women that are willing to go to Asia looking for a man.
I think in the near future, we're going to continue to see the changing dynamics for Black men and for Black women, especially as the rhetoric continues to grow in the manosphere, opposing this concept of feminism or opposing those that are Black pill. Women who are hypergamous or focus on the 20%, which leaves them angry men as angry men. But I think I want to make sure that um, tonight, anyone who did not know what the Manosphere was, they know now. They know that it is a group of men who, Steve, advocate for themselves. Is
Pretty much. I mean, it's like they are women who are feminists. They are men who are interested in men's rights, and that runs the gambit. You do have some fairly aggressive groups, like the black pills or the incels, and then you just have some men that are just more concerned about some political reform. I think that is something that led to the Roe versus Wade being um, pretty much turned around or whatever the case may be. So, not speaking on where I'm on that point, but I think that definitely played a part in it that they wouldn't have been around during the time of the original ruling. So you have the and like we always still talk about the child support courts and family courts have traditionally never been fair to men. So, those are things that we are looking at collectively. I don't want you to feel like when you hear the word manosphere, you should cringe. You probably should try to listen to see what part of the manosphere it is. I think that we got a good dose of a lot of red pill content from Kevin Samuels that women should have been listening to objectively and not necessarily being triggered personally. When we talk about, well, okay, who
it's
are
the
these who
message.
are
Like
these who are
it's
these men and what do they want?
it's
I,
not the message, because you and I've had this conversation several times. I agree with a lot of the Kevin Samuel message, right? I didn't agree with how he communicated his message, but many of the things that he said, I thought he had a valid point about them. But it's the delivery, right? And so I think we fail to realize that if you really want people to hear you, then you should be cognizant of how you deliver the message and not just giving the message. But controversy is what people like. And so I think at the end of the day, I'm not sure if he really wanted to help the masses, or was it just about more controversy means more likes and more clicks? I don't know. Hey,
well,
Judy.
let's talk about this real quickly. He did have his own personal group where he did have people that were selected and then went on to get married. I think the thing about Kevin is Yes, he was in an entertainment space, but it was his space. People chose to go in his space. So, we can't go into somebody's home and tell them what they have to cook. If that is his delivery, that's his delivery.
It was.
So, it
I have to like it.
was something that took off, and you and I had been on his show prior to it taking off when he was primarily focused on more male content, and he talked to the men just as bad, if
Mhm.
not worse. So, to me, it was more about the internalization and the way that women interpreted things. Like I had a conversation with one of my friends this weekend, and I said something, and she heard something totally different. And I told her, I know exactly what you heard, but that's not what I said. And she was like, oh, yes, you're right. So I think, it goes back to that wonderful book that Dr. Guys have written about listening. Those are
Mhm.
some of the skills that certain people with longer hair may or may not have. So, I think as we talk about the manosphere, we know what we've gone through. We know how we have to go about to get a woman. And I think that that's just not something that's reciprocated because everything now, the messaging is totally different. I'm a bad chick. I'm a boss chick. And I always tell you, it drives me crazy because they bosses but don't have no employees. I've never understood how you're a boss and you don't have no employees. You don't have nobody reporting to you, but you're a boss. You got an online store and you're the only employee, but you're a
Listen,
boss.
we're gonna get
Well,
off that. That's a
no,
whole
but I'm
different.
saying that's the messaging that takes place for women. Is we've put a lot of things that women have done on a pedestal, and now all of a sudden, we look down upon the guy who's got a plumbing business, but he be maybe making 175,000 on the low. But women don't even really have a concept of those things. If it doesn't look like a
Right.
6 foot corporate guy getting in and out of a BMW, with a suit and tie on, who eats at Roof Chris twice a week, then she's not interested.
I agree, Steve. I think that's a conversation that definitely, as women, we need to have with each other when we talk about what we want in husbands and what that husband looks like, right? Is it more important for him to look a certain way to drive a certain thing, or are there other characteristics that are more important, right? And so I think that's the type of conversation that women need to start having with each other and be sincere and honest about what do you want? Do you want to show what might look good, or do you really want these particular characteristics in a mate that you're going to spend the rest of your life with? And so that sounds like some more future topics that we'll be talking about in 2023. But thanks for reminding me. I do have two books out, but the one you just spoke to about listening, I don't think that we listen to each other. I don't think that when men and women are in the room and having conversations with each other that we're listening. We're hearing each other, but we're not listening. And we're hearing already thinking about how we're going to respond to what you said, even though I did not actively listen to what you said. And so I think that's one of our downfalls as a group of people and just people in general, which is why I wrote the book, because I do want people to learn how to communicate more effectively. But in order to do that, you have to start by learning how to actively listen. So, in case you want to pick up that book, it is on Amazon. It's called Stop Hearing, Start Listening. So, yeah, go pick up the book and buy it for somebody that you think just don't know how to listen. But as we prepare to wrap up, we are already in November, right? Like Thanksgiving is next week. And so it is going to be very easy for many of us to get lost in the holiday season. And I can't stress this enough to anybody who's watching or who's going to watch this replay. Everyone is not going to be rejoicing during the holiday season. There are some people that are struggling with seasonal affective disorder right now just because of the change in the weather. There are some people that are struggling with depression. Many might even have suicidal ideations. And because we're so lost in our own happiness and celebratory experiences with the holidays, we overlook and miss these individuals that are suffering in silence. So I'm asking each of you to make sure you don't get lost in your own celebration. In fact, just what's today? Monday? Yesterday, I just found out that someone I know, son was killed in a car accident. So here it is, a week before Thanksgiving, and she will have to bury her child. Right. And so there are so many individuals that lost loved ones right before the holidays, where they are now stuck in their grief. So instead of them celebrating with you, they're mourning the loved one. Many individuals we recall didn't make it through COVID. And so I want you to keep that in mind. Reach out to people. Don't get so busy and so distracted that you can't pick up the phone and ask someone how they're doing. You might even need to drop by and see them face to face. You guys, we have become a society that we live behind these social media screens. And oftentimes we don't even make human contact with people. So if you get an opportunity, reach out, family members, friends, individuals who maybe you haven't heard from, and you're thinking, what's going on with them? The other thing that I want you guys to be mindful about is this is fourth quarter. We are getting ready to close out 2022, and you do not want to wait until 2023 hits to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this in 2023. Mm-mm. Start planning now. Figure out what you want to do. Is it somebody said a couple weeks ago when I did The Power of the Womb that she was working on her book, but she didn't know how to write it. And I thought, oh, let me tell you, I know how to write a book. I can tell you how to write a book, but you got to get started and you got to write a plan. And for someone who had been holding on to books for years, 10 years, I kept telling everybody, I'm going to release this book. It was like, you done? Mm-mm. You done with the book? Mm-mm. And it wasn't until this year I finally made the decision that I can't keep procrastinating. I have no reason to procrastinate. The only thing I have to do is to do it. So I'm speaking to somebody who is contemplating what they want to do, whatever that is, write a book, start a business, end a relationship, start a relationship. I have no idea. But time is our only commodity and it waits for no one. So don't wait, don't put it off. Make sure you write it down, create a plan, and put it into action. I hope you guys will come back. I have no idea when Steve and I will be back. We'll be back.
And for Dr. Malik, do your vision board. I saw Black Panther. Lupita's looking real thick this time. I know how you feel about her. So everybody, get your vision boards together for next year. Those things can really help you manifest what you want. They've always helped me. Been something that I've used as a tool in the future. I mean, the past as well as I will continue to use in the future for yourselves. Because if you don't write down what you want, then you can't really get it. And so that's one of the things I always tell Dr. Guy when I talk to my friends about relationships. When you write down this woman, when you write down this guy that you've identified, then you should be able to back engineer what they will like about you. It's not always about what you can get, it's what you can give. You got to have a little bait. So if you don't have any bait, you can't catch the fish. So,
Absolutely. And before we go, Dr. Fatima Muse, please drop your contact information. You guys, she is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is a licensed professional counselor. I do believe she is accepting new clients right now. Everett, I believe if you are still in the room, um, please post your information in the chat. I believe I saw that you are a therapist in the Dallas area. Finding a Black male therapist is a challenge. So whenever
go.
I come across one, please post your information. Um, Again, Fatima, Dr. Fatima Muse, if you're still in the room, place your contact information. Again, you're accepting new clients. And Mr. Everett, please post your contact information. I am always getting asked questions about, do I know a Black male therapist? And I can probably count them on one hand, maybe two. So I would love to be able to add that resource. So you guys, This has been a blast. I've enjoyed myself. I hope you learn what the manosphere is, the red pill, the blue pill, the black pill, the purple pill. So if anyone asks you about them, you know what they are. And hopefully you can educate yourself a little bit more about how you're showing up with the people that you come in contact with. Everybody be blessed. Make sure you tune in if you're not already following me on social media. Dr. Tanisha Guy on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and baby, don't forget TikTok. Make sure you follow me on all those platforms. Everybody have a good night.
Good night.